All right, so we have Catalyst Center installed here, and the first thing I like to do is go to System 360 and just verify that services are showing good. We've got no alerts in the flag area up here at the top. If assurance or automation was down, it would give you a flag up here, and you'd know that. But System 360 is overall how Catalyst Center is doing, and right now you can see we only have one host that's part of the cluster. If I wanted to break down the services, of course, we can look there and see all the different services, the app stacks, the versions, and the health of those that are running. And then high availability. Again, it's a single node deployment use cases that we're doing SDA, and Catalyst Center becomes really required. We're doing a lot through Catalyst Center. Then we would want that 3-node deployment. And in some cases, we want a full geo-redundant deployment, which is 7 nodes, because there's 2 3-node clusters and a 7th witness node that goes into HA. So it just depends on how highly available you want Catalyst Center to be and what all you're using it for. Then down here under software management, you can see that 1 applications are available for installation, and that's basically for technical support integration with your CCO account. No backups have been identified yet. Again, it's single node deployment, and this is for a training course. So not going to be configuring backups in my environment. This is the appliance, as you learned in previous lessons. So it's a physical appliance, and there's a lot of redundancy built in, multiple power supplies, as well as multiple RAID arrays for the hard drives for both the operating system and the data storage and logging. Also, we can see we have not connected ICE yet. I actually just started a reset of the lab ICE database, and apparently I didn't type in no. So that's happening as we speak to make sure that we get a factory new ICE deployment, ICE 3 deployment that we're going to be integrating with this. And we'll just take that from the top. But basically, we can look at system health, and you'll see if you had a cluster, you would see exactly how it was connected, and then how we get out to the internet, right, in that case. So you can see right now, IMC is not set up yet. So the IMC, the Integrated Management Controller of the appliance server, that is a separate OS, a separate tool that's always running on Cisco UCS servers. Okay, so even though this is an appliance, it's a UCS server also. That IMC that we used initially to define the network adapter properties and do the network settings so we could make sure that our interfaces were configured as per the design, that interface basically is always running, and it's independent of the operating system running on the server, and it's independent of any applications installed. So Catalyst Center basically is saying, hey, we're not connecting to IMC yet, but it can connect to IMC, and it can monitor the health of the server as well, so that it's not just monitoring the health of the network, but it's also monitoring its own health, which is pretty cool, right? So this is the system health page again, and then you see your enterprise VIP. And then if you look up your service explorer, it tells you which nodes are running which services. So once you start doing clustered architecture, you'll notice that certain servers or certain services are running on these different appliances, right? And then of course they're taking care of the synchronization of data between them for the HA. So it takes 3 nodes. 1 node could fail, and you would be survivable, but it's a 3-node architecture for Catalyst Center, and you can do that. They all have to be the same size, same. So if you do the large, they all have to be large, all that kind of good stuff. So make sure all that's thought of in advance. And as we said during the initial setup, previous videos, even if I'm doing a single node deployment, I'll configure it as it's gonna be part of a cluster. So you still use a cluster IP address that would support the 3 nodes, and you still use interfaces that, again, would support that architecture if you decide to grow to it. Because I have been involved in lots of rebuilds of DNAC and Catalyst Center now, simply because people did not factor in their HA, and eventually they wanted to do the HA deployment. Some people were given DNAC boxes for free as part of purchases, and decided to order it later on once they realized how useful it is, all that kind of good stuff. But the System 360 is basically, you want to start there for any new deployment. Just make sure that all systems look good, that the software is up to date. When you get on the latest stuff, as you see, the system is up to date. We are connected to the Cisco software server. all that kind of stuff. And that one application, again, is just the support tool. Okay. But automation, assurance, health is there. And this also has service checking scripts as well. And what that really means is if any of those sub-services fail, there's scripts to go in there and check them and restart them. Basically, it tries to heal itself if there's a problem. So later versions of Catalyst Center have become much better at that than earlier versions. And also the software updating. I can't tell you, I was very pleased with doing the software updates. And just to make sure, I wanted to go through. We started off with 1.5, I think, something like that. And we did the integrated software updates instead of me just downloading the ISO and mounting it and blowing away the config, which would have saved a lot of time. I actually did the software updates to see if there was still any bugs that could potentially wreak havoc with Catalyst Center. So I don't think I mentioned yet in this course, but the first Catalyst Center deployment I ever did was for a very large enterprise company that was just testing it out. This was basically embargoed at the time. It was that new. Okay. And it, of course, wasn't named the same, all that kind of good stuff. But we got everything installed, and we had their first few controllers and switches connected and reporting to Catalyst Center. Everything was healthy, and there was software updates available. And so we said, okay, well, we can. They wanted to go ahead and do those while I was there, and I was like, no, we got things running. It's healthy. Let's leave it. It was Friday. It was about time for me to be off for the weekend, but they were like, no, while you're here, let's just go ahead and take care of it. And of course, that was a very long weekend because we blew up the Catalyst Center deployment, full HA deployment, completely toast. And again, back then it wasn't Catalyst Center, APIC or something like that. Or there was something right before DNA Center. But bottom line, I didn't see any of that during the upgrades to full-blown Catalyst Center right now from 1.5. So things have gotten a lot better in that regard from my experience here with this single node. So the other things that we typically do right away is get ICE configured, because ICE is an integral part of the architecture, right? Especially if you're doing SDA. There are certain clients out there that are not using ICE, and so it is not required to use ICE to have Catalyst Center, and a lot of people don't realize that. Catalyst Center, in essence, is a big NMS, okay? It does a lot, is the truth. There's a lot of things that Catalyst Center does. There's certain things it does really, really well, and there's certain things that, are going to evolve over time, but there's a lot going on under the hood, okay? Now, what the power really comes from, in my opinion, for most teams today, is getting you introduced to the automation, the config standardization features of Catalyst Center, and the assurance features, and wireless health, all that kind of stuff. And now we're integrating AI ops, AI endpoint, assessments, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to go over all of that in this course. But there's at its heart, it's still an NMS, a network management system. Basically meaning that we're going to connect it's going to manage all of our network devices. Okay, so our switches, our routers, firewalls in some cases, not going to configure necessarily firewall policies from Catalyst Center, but managing and getting visibility on those devices, as well as our wireless controllers and access points, is basically what some of the powerful things of Catalyst Center. Okay, so NMS, right? Network Management System. That basically means that I'm going to connect Catalyst Center to my devices, and they're going to start feeding back telemetry protocols. Okay, data to Catalyst Center. What is telemetry protocols? Well, classic telemetry protocols were MTP, SNMP, and NetFlow. Okay, things like that. Now, and syslog, right? SNMP, syslog, NetFlow. Those are kind of, and NetFlow's evolved over the years. It's become a lot more powerful. Okay, and nowadays we've got ABC, but we also have some new technologies as well that Catalyst Center is integrating us with being able to configure our devices. Very cool stuff in the 9K architecture that now supports netconf, restconf, all that kind of stuff, and kind of API-driven configuration management of our devices. So there's a lot to dive into, but the core part of this is I want to manage and have visibility over my network architecture. So single pane of glass management over my network architecture, right? Now, that also, again, includes a management experience for wired wireless use cases. So anytime I'm managing a wireless architecture, I need to have what's called heat maps. And I need those heat maps to show, what RF coverage looks like for good RF health. Okay. So some people do, different things to get that vantage point, but Catalyst Center is the tool, and it was primed before Catalyst Center that would give us the ability to define our buildings, our locations, our sites, and basically have the building layout, the floors, okay, and then where the APs are on the floors entered so that we know where things are. And what's been realized over the years is once you start having all of that facilities data, and I know, hey, these are my locations, these are my physical addresses. And then within those addresses, I have these areas. And within these areas, I have these buildings. Okay. And within those buildings, I have floors. And within those floors, I have switches and I have access points and I have equipment. Okay. But by assigning those assets to those facilities, I end up with a lot of metadata about my devices just by having them organized, basically. It kind of starts forcing companies to have good network hygiene. Because if you think about it, a lot of companies kind of evolved over the years, over many, many, many years, especially agencies and state agencies, things like that, power companies, electric companies, all different types of companies over the years that have evolved and just kind of patch things as they go, right? And if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of thing. And so what evolves over the time is nobody really taking a look at holistically at architecture and going, you know what, we should do, 3-tier campus designs, right? And standardize on distribution switches for every location and then access switches for the access. And then we're also going to standardize on, I want the first, 40 ports of a 48 port switch to be used for access interfaces only, meaning access points, phones, endpoints, end users, things like that. And then we'll use the other 8 ports maybe for uplinks, trunks, servers, whatever that other use case is. And some people do the first 40 or access ports, and then the 8 ports are for your APs, right, to connect out at the access layer. So there's all different types of designs with that. But the point is companies, a lot of companies have evolved without really a step back to go, hey, how should we be deploying this architecture in a way that's consistent, where I have consistent software upgrades across the architecture, I have consistent configurations across my devices. If I have 3650 switches, they're all on the same code. And if I have 3650 switches, they all have similar configurations to them. I don't have one-off configs floating around up there, right? That's where a big step that Catalyst Center is helping companies natively. If we just populate the data, right? If we just take the time to build out our architecture and our facilities, put in our floors and put in the equipment where it goes, right? Discover the network equipment, assign it where it goes. So just those aspects starts getting your house in order, right? Which is, like I said, a big deal. I can't tell you how many clients I've seen pre-DNA Center, pre-Catalyst Center that was using Prime, for example, that was basically only using it for wireless heat maps and managing wireless devices. They never added switches, right? There's a lot of power in having all of your architecture under one roof for visibility, for troubleshooting, and assurance, which, as expensive as Catalyst Center is, assurance is an easy ROI for those wondering how to budget for it, right? And we'll go over that. And also, like I said, just the config management, network hygiene, and the fact that I've got one roof to manage my, and one pane of glass to manage my entire network architecture. These are all big points for that. So we have a lot to go over in this course. We're going to be doing both SDA and non-SDA. This first course, we're really doing non-SDA, okay? The next course, we'll get into SDA and those deployments. And one of the reasons that we separated out is because there's a lot of companies out there that are not quite ready for full-blown SDA yet, or they might have a mixed vendor environment, okay? And there's so much use case already for clients that don't even have to do SDA. And some of the marketing with Cisco is very SDA focused, where in reality, there's a ton of benefits even if you're not doing SDA. So some of the feedback and clients that I've seen with DNA and Catalyst Center deployed has been, oh, well, we thought we had to do SDA to really use it. So we haven't been using it that much, right? Because we don't have all the gear necessarily already to do SDA, right? Because that requires the newer switches, right? The newer routers and the devices that support it. So it takes a while to get all that architecture upgraded to where it could do SDA deployments. But there's a ton of benefits and power in Catalyst Center, even for non-SDA deployments, for just, like I said, NMS purposes, config management purposes, standardization of my configs, standardization of software, all of that kind of stuff. And then, of course, assurance for troubleshooting day-to-day tasks. All of those things are a massive value to clients, regardless of your use case. So kind of all over the place in that video, but we got a lot to do in this course. We're going to get more focused, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.